When I first realized that catfish fishing in America is not just about fishing, but a whole separate culture, I was standing on the bow of a small boat in the middle of the Mississippi River. It was quiet all around, but I knew that real life was happening beneath the water. Moments like that make you understand why Americans are obsessed with catfish. This is a fish that can completely change the way you see fishing. Few people know that catfish is one of the oldest fish on the planet, having barely changed over millions of years. In the United States, it is considered the #1 freshwater predator in terms of power and endurance. Some specimens exceed 100 pounds, and that is not a myth, but a documented fact. When a monster like that takes the bait, you feel it with your whole body. In this story, I want to show not just how to catch catfish from a boat, but how to become part of this tradition. It is a journey into a world of deep holes, currents, and night bites. The usual fishing templates do not work here. What works here is patience, experience, and a true understanding of the species. Let's start with the basics. What kinds of catfish actually live in America? Most people think a catfish is just a catfish, but that is a huge mistake. In the US, several main species are officially recognized, and each of them has its own habits. Your entire fishing strategy depends on this. The most popular species is the channel catfish. This is the fish caught by both beginners and professionals. It is found in almost every state and adapts well to different conditions. It is easier to catch from a boat than the others because it often holds along channel edges. The second giant is the blue catfish. This is the true king of American rivers. This species most often sets weight records. It lives in large waters and loves deep areas, which makes boat fishing the perfect approach. The third key species is the flathead catfish. It is more aggressive and cunning than its relatives. It often hides in log jams under bridges and in washed out riverbeds. Catching one from a boat is always a special adventure. All three species share one thing in common. They love structure. This can be holes, depth changes, submerged trees, or old concrete slabs. That is why a boat becomes an irreplaceable tool. You simply cannot reach these places from shore. I always start with my fish finder. In the US, people rarely go serious catfishing without one. It lets you see not only the fish, but also the bottom shape, current, and possible cover. It is like having eyes underwater. When I find a promising hole, I do not drop my rigs right away. I let the boat drift over it a few times to understand the bottom relief. Catfish dislike noise, so sharp maneuvers can spook them. Calm and smooth movement is the key. It is very important to understand the seasons. In spring, catfish leave the depths and stay closer to shore. In summer, they move to the deepest areas where the water is cooler. In fall, they become active again and start feeding heavily. Boat fishing allows you to follow the catfish all year long. You are not tied to one spot like you are from shore. You are constantly moving with the fish, which makes fishing dynamic and alive. Now about tackle. American catfish anglers usually use heavy casting rods. They are shorter but much more powerful than regular spinning rods, which is necessary to withstand the runs of big catfish. The reels are usually bait casters. They are more reliable under heavy load and make it easier to control line drop into deep water, which is especially important for blue catfish. Line or braid is always extra strong. I use at least 50-pound braid. It gives you confidence that when a monster bites, you will not be left empty-handed. This is not the place to save money. The rig is usually simple, or a sliding sinker, a leader, and a big hook. Americans love circle hooks because they almost never seriously injure the fish. This is important since many people practice catch and release. A catfish is not just a trophy, it is a living legend. Now let's talk about bait. In the US, the most popular options are shad, herring, chunks of fish, and even chicken liver. Each catfish species has its own preferences. For example, flatheads almost always prefer live bait. I often cut my bait right on the boat. The smell of fresh fish spreads quickly with the current. Catfish have an incredible sense of smell and can detect bait from hundreds of meters away. That is their main weapon. Once the rigs are in the water, the waiting begins, but it is not boring waiting. You constantly analyze, watch the fish finder, and adjust the boat position. Every little detail matters. The most interesting part starts at night. That is when big catfish go out hunting. You sit on the boat, fog all around, and only the bell on the rod breaks the silence. It is a moment worth living for. When a blue catfish bites, you never doubt it for a second. The rod bends into a deep arc, The reel screams and your heart jumps out of your chest. This is not just a fish, it is a fight, and it can last 10 or 15 minutes. Channel catfish are more active but less massive. They often bite in bursts, and you can catch a dozen in one evening. This species is perfect for beginners because it forgives many mistakes. A flathead is always a surprise. It can sit motionless for a long time and then rip the tackle away in an instant. Many people lose them because of haste. Calm and a cool head are critical here. Another important point is boat positioning. I always set up slightly upstream from the hole so the bait naturally drifts into the zone where the catfish are holding. It is a simple but extremely effective trick. American anglers often use special rod holders which allow them to fish with several rods at once. From a boat, it looks like a small battery of cannons, but control is always in your hands. Weather also plays a huge role. Before a storm, catfish become more active as if they feel the pressure change. Those days often bring real trophies. Still, safety on the water always comes first. I always wear a life jacket, even when the water seems calm. Rivers like the Mississippi or the Ohio have powerful currents that do not forgive mistakes. Boat catfishing always has a touch of extreme. When you first land a catfish over 30 kilograms, you start seeing fishing differently. It is not about food, it is about experience, about feeling power and respecting nature, about a moment you will remember for the rest of your life. I have seen people cry from happiness after landing their first blue catfish. It is not embarrassing. These are emotions you cannot fake. That is why I keep going back on the water again and again. And when people ask me where to start with boat catfishing in America, I say one thing: study the species, understand their behavior, and do not be afraid of depth. Because under that dark water, there are stories still waiting to be told. Over time, I realized that real success in catfishing begins with reading the water. It is not just looking at the surface, but feeling the river by the color of the water, the direction of the current, and even the behavior of birds. You can tell where the fish are today. You will not find these details in guidebooks, but they are what turn a beginner into a real catfish angler. I often see people anchoring in random places and waiting for hours without a single bite. They think the catfish are just inactive. In reality, they are simply not in the right spot. Catfish are fish of specific locations, and from a boat, you have the unique advantage of finding them. One very effective technique is drifting with the current. I let the boat slowly slide over deep areas, keeping the baits right on the bottom. This allows you to cover huge areas in a short time and often helps me discover new productive spots. Sometimes I use vertical fishing and dropping the rig straight under the boat. This method works especially well in winter when catfish group tightly on the bottoms of deep holes. The bite goes straight into your hand. There's also the anchor and patience method. I set up over structure and simply wait for the catfish to come to my bait. It can take an hour or two, but when it finally bites, you forget about all the time spent waiting. Patience is the main tool here. Another important topic is safety when bringing a big catfish into the boat. This fish has sharp spines on its pectoral fins. One careless move and you can get seriously injured. I always use special gloves. When the catfish is in the boat, I never grab it barehanded by the head. It is better to hold it by the lower jaw very carefully. Big specimens can make sudden violent moves, so full control is essential. Many American anglers photograph their trophies and release them. It is part of the culture. I support this approach too, especially with big blue catfish. These fish are the future of the water. Interestingly, boat catfishing in the US often becomes a family tradition. I have seen grandfathers passing their secrets to their grandsons. It is not just a technique, it is a way of life, and there is a special kind of magic in that. Some states hold official catfishing tournaments where fish are measured, photographed, and released. Prizes can reach tens of thousands of dollars, but for me, the main thing is not the money, it is the adrenaline. To be successful, I always keep notes after every trip: water level, temperature, weather, and results. After a few years, you build your own encyclopedia, and it works better than any forum. In summer, I often fish at dawn when catfish are still active after the night. The sun is just rising and the river looks magical. It is the best start to the day you can imagine. In fall, everything changes. Catfish feed aggressively before the cold sets in. Bites can be sharp and violent, and on those days, I bring more bait because it just gets eaten. In winter, fishing does not stop. It just becomes more technical. I look for the deepest holes and fish vertically. Bites are rare, but extremely valuable. Every winter fish is a reward. I always recommend starting with channel catfish. They are less picky and more active. After catching a dozen, you already understand catfish behavior in general, and then you can move on to trophy blue catfish. Flathead is the next level. Catching it requires more knowledge and experience, but the first time you pull this predator out of a logjam, the feeling is beyond words. The peak of catfish fishing. People often ask me what the best bait is, and I always answer fresh bait. Catfish can tell the difference between an old and a fresh piece of fish, and that can decide whether you get a bite or not. From a boat, it is easy to experiment. You can quickly change depth, bait type, and location, which makes learning much faster. Every trip is a new lesson. Sometimes there are days with no bites at all, but I still love those days because they give me a chance just to be on the river, listen to nature, and think. Fishing is not only about the catch. The biggest catfish I have ever landed from a boat weighed over 90 pounds. It was a blue catfish, and the fight lasted almost 20 minutes. When I finally brought it aboard, my hands were shaking. It was a moment I will never forget. Boat catfishing in America is a blend of science and romance. There is room for technology and intuition, and the more you fish, the more you realize how little you really know. It is an endless journey. Every river has its own character. The Mississippi is power and scale, the Tennessee is stability, the Missouri is unpredictability. Boat catfishing lets you feel these differences, making every trip unique. I often take friends who have never caught catfish before. At first they are skeptical, but after the first hard strike, their eyes light up. And I know another catfish angler has been born. At the end of every trip, I always clean up after myself. That is rule number 1. A clean river is the guarantee that we will be able to fish here tomorrow. Catfish deserve respect. If you dream of real American fishing, start with catfish. It is accessible, exciting, and incredibly emotional. You do not need an expensive boat to feel this rush, only the gelée to try. I believe that everyone can catch their first big catfish, not tomorrow and not right away, but in time. The main thing is not to give up after failures, because the best bites always happen when you're just about ready to head home. When the sun sets and the water begins to darken, I always stay for a few more casts. That is when miracles often happen, as if the river itself decides to reward you for your patience. It is magic that cannot be explained. Boat catfishing taught me to wait, to observe, and to trust my instincts. It made me calmer in life. When you have fought a fish stronger than you, small problems no longer seem important. It is real therapy. I want everyone who watches this video to feel this atmosphere. Not just learn facts, but feel as if they were on the boat with me, hearing the splash of water and feeling the tension in the rod. Because that is what real fishing is. And if you ever find yourself on an American river with a small boat and big dreams, remember these words. Somewhere beneath you may be the catfish of your life. And all that separates you from it is a single cast.